I gave swords to teens and expected great things. Crazy? Maybe. Dangerous? Yes. Transformational? Definitely. I believe. Let's pause. Before I tell you what I believe, let me tell you how I even came to consider including sword fighting in the classroom. I have the privilege of working at Next High School, a small charter school where we get to know our students pretty well, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their interests. I knew that this year I had a group of highly intelligent seniors who also struggled focusing on traditional academic work. Given that we have 70-minute block classes, I knew I had to do something radical, yet entirely in keeping with my content, British literature. Now, I already knew from my study of stage combat, something that you would see in a Shakespeare play or in Star Wars, I had already been led to discover HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts. And through HEMA, I discovered the extraordinary connections between the martial arts and British literature. Now, those connections to learning were genuinely amazing. But as I studied the sword arts more, and as my students became more involved, I started to notice a change. My students were more willing to take advantage of opportunities. They were more willing to try something in the face of failure. And I realized that introducing sword fighting into the curriculum was leading to academic, physical, and emotional transformations. Now, how, you will ask, and you should ask, would introducing sword fighting into the classroom actually lead to academic achievement? It sounds like a novelty, a distraction at best. Well, sword fighting currently is a novelty, but it is also a martial art. And it is a martial art thoroughly grounded in history and in literature. The European martial arts are making a comeback. There's a worldwide revival going on that's combining scholarship and action. Practitioners from Germany and Britain and Mexico are all reading ancient manuscripts, studying body mechanics, and reviving this ancient art. Students at Next High School are part of a living scholarship. Now, take for instance the curious case of Mayer, one of the most notorious contributors to current HEMAists. Mayer was a public servant in the 1500s, and he spent exorbitant sums of money creating and commissioning sword fighting manuscripts so that the martial art wouldn't be lost. Now, in doing so, he also created lavish catalogs of costumes that created an example for other costumers and for other sword fighting manuals. Students who study this, they get to know the warfare of the time, and they get to know the costuming of the time. Now, incidentally, Mayer actually embezzled a lot of funds in order to create these manuscripts, and he was hanged for it. This also teaches students life lessons. Yes. Now, this is not just something that students can study to figure out the changing of fashion, the changing of warfare, or even just the changing of weapons. This is a chance for them to engage in technical manuals of the past and to put them into action. For example, our HEMA club spent 30 minutes studying a particularly difficult longsword text. We actually compared the English with the original German. We tried out competing interpretations, and then we decided something based on what worked best. I took that text to my instructor. We went through the same process, and I brought the decision back to the students. In that, they were learning about reading, application, and collaboration. But more importantly, they were learning about the process of curiosity and problem solving, something that is absolutely necessary for true academic and life success. Now, physical transformation is probably what's most obvious when you're discussing a martial art. So what makes HEMA different? Part of it is the fact that we at Next study the Germanic system. The Germanic way is a fairly straightforward system that can apply to almost any situation. You can be unarmed, facing an armed combatant, having a long sword, a dagger, a spear, any of those things. But you're forced to be agile, both in your body and in your mind, to deal with this. So imagine, I'm facing my opponent. We both have long swords. We're at a distance, but suddenly she advances, and so now we're in a wrestling situation, only I'm carrying my long sword. In all of that, I have to have intense balance and concentration and focus, something that trains teens well. Now, a lot of the physical transformation comes through the fact that we're constantly moving, and we're having to swing a sword around while maintaining this excellent posture. But it works really well in the classroom for this reason. Students voluntarily put their phones away. In fact, they take them out of their pockets. Why? Well, one wrong move, one poor defense, and that iPhone 11 is forever shattered. Now, it wasn't just physical, it wasn't just academic changes I was seeing. I was seeing emotional changes. All of us were growing in courage. Now, courage is that ability to face pain and danger without fear. It's one thing to try your hand at drawing. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Someone makes fun of your proportions? It's quite another thing to change and try something new that if you mess up, you could get whacked pretty hard or worse. I send home concussion forms for a reason. Now, the type of courage that this martial art encourages isn't just passive. It's actually bravery. It's something where you seek out opportunities, you look for adventure, and you exploit the opportunities that you find fully. In fight terms, this is called seizing the vor, taking the fight to your opponent. And in the modern military, you might hear the phrase, looking for work. Now, all of this talk of seizing the vor and taking the fight to the opponent sounds as if it might encourage pure aggression, but done rightly, instead it trains students to seek out what's right and to do right fearlessly. In fact, after I introduce this concept of seizing the vor, I often have students yelling across the school, "Seize the vor," at their friends when they're encouraging them to do something that they should. Knowledge, action, and courage. These attributes embody wisdom. I believe this is what sword fighting and education has the potential to do, to energetically train teens to seek for what's right, to do what's right, and then to courageously stand up for others in the face of danger. This is the kind of courage that we need, the kind of courage that undergirds a more just and robust republic.